going to just begin by maybe asking some questions, just to kind of find out a little bit about who you are. So Suzanne, if you don't mind, can you give us an overview of your role as HUD's Connecticut Field Officer Director?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you to the Realtors for having HUD here today. And thank you for all you do to bring housing to your communities and enable people to purchase a home, find a rental. We wouldn't be successful without all of you, so thank you. As Field Office Director, I have oversight over HUD's programs. Our HUD programs touch every place in the state. People tend to forget, not you, but others, that FHA is part of HUD. So everything from home ownership to community development to multifamily rental, public housing, vouchers, community development are all under our umbrella, as well as the homelessness program currently as well. And prior to that, I was the Director of Multifamily Housing and did a lot of development work here in Eastern Connecticut, especially on elderly housing. So I've been in HUD a very long time, and again, we couldn't do without you, so thank you all very much.
Thanks so much, Suzanne. Many of us, this would be an interesting poll. Who here is a realtor that actually is selling homes? Okay. Leave your hand up if you have done at least one CHFA transaction in your career.
Yeah. All right, let's go.
You can put them down in front of me. So Brian, can you give us an overview then of how homebuyer programs, down payment assistance, and pre-home buyer education are making an impact in Connecticut?
Sure, and again, thank you guys for having us today. Thanks to you for hosting Quincy and for Susie for putting this all together. This is beautiful. Sold out event, I could see. No empty seats, but so normally when I do these outreach presentations, I'm speaking to home buyers. I'm not normally speaking to realtors, so sometimes I do a synopsis of the real estate market, but I definitely don't have to do that today. Jessica did an amazing job with that, of course, and you guys are the experts. You guys know exactly what's out there, and you see it. The last couple of years have been challenging. Obviously, inventory has been very limited. It's led to high demand for housing. Prices have gone up. It's made it super challenging for any home buyer really to purchase a home right now. It's super competitive. Even tremendously more challenging for that low to moderate income first-time home buyer. So that's where CHFA comes in. We've been around for over 50 years, and we're always innovating and trying to come up with new and creative ways to help that first-time home buyer. So there's three things we're kind of built on. Our three pillars are our first-time home buyer programs, which have low rates and low closing costs, always have. The second one is our powerful down payment assistance programs. We've had one for many, many years that I'll go into, and a newer one that's going to come up on 3 years this June. And the third one is, of course, the free homebuyer education. We partner with 12 different HUD-approved counseling agencies to offer free homebuyer education to those first-time homebuyers. Education is power. A lot of borrowers are scared to jump into this market. They think it's intimidating and it's impossible, but it's not. And when they work with that counselor and get that free education, they build that confidence. And that's kind of the first step. So going to our first-time homebuyer programs, we partner with actually up to 90 different lenders in Connecticut now. That number has increased a lot over the years because CHFA has become very popular with our innovative programs. 4 of them are actually sponsors today. We have, I saw Keith from Homestead. I think he left the room now. He said he had an emergency. But Kim over there with Core Plus and Liberty and Chelsea. I saw we're sponsors too. So we have over 90 lenders. They all have brick and mortar offices in Connecticut. We do require that because we want the borrower to have the option to go work with that loan officer in person, however they want to engage business. Our rates are super low right now. We post them every day at 9 o'clock. As of yesterday, it was 6.125% on the FHA and VA and USDA, 6.5% on the conventional. And those are with 0 points and low closing costs that we fix for the borrower. So that really limits the borrower's out-of-pocket expense, which is really great. The next thing is the down payment assistance programs. Again, we have 2 of them. We have DAP, which has been around for many, many years and had some different reincarnations. At the current time, it's up to $15,000. It's a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. You use it towards your closing costs and down payment, and it's fixed at 5%, which is a really favorable rate for a 30-year fixed rate for that $15,000. That uses our regular income limits. Then the new one that I'm sure everybody in the room knows about, just a quick show of hands, time to own. Have you guys heard of it? Oh yeah, this is great, you know, because normally when I do the home buyer presentations, I only get like maybe 20% of the room to raise their hand on that, but glad you guys know about it. That's coming up on 3 years, and of course that's been super powerful. That is $25,000 for your down payment and closing costs at 0%, forgivable at 10% a year over 10 years, which is absolutely phenomenal. That's been a huge game changer for us, certainly helped many home buyers in this current environment who are dealing with the struggles of inflation. You know, the cost of rent's gone up dramatically, the cost of groceries, the cost of gas, the cost of eggs, everything's gone up. So having that $25,000 in their arsenal has been incredibly helpful and powerful to these home buyers. And then the last thing, well actually no, I want to quickly mention time to home could be layered with other down payment assistance programs. That's a big part of the success. It plays well with others. And I'm actually glad that Jackie is back there with HDF, because I do a lot of events with Jackie. They have amazing programs. If you haven't seen them, check them out. But you can combine a CHFA First Mortgage, our Time to Own, and Jackie's HDF programs and really maximize the borrower's resources. If they qualify for all these programs, it opens the door for them to reach that home even more so, which is absolutely phenomenal. So we're fortunate to have this program. Just quickly, I'll say that the governor proposed another $100 million in the budget for that program for the next 2 years. That's his first pitch. I hope it goes through the House and the Senate and that money is there, because that lifeblood will certainly help a lot more borrowers. And then last but not least, we work with our amazing counseling agencies to offer that free homebuyer education with the free workshops that offer education on pre-approvals, shopping for a home, and ultimately the closing process. Thank you.
That is a lot of information.
Yep. Fire hose, sorry.
One of the things I like to do is, as much as I love a script, I sometimes deviate a little bit. I am going to deviate a little bit because as the presentation was presented just a moment ago by Beth, there was a blaring question that jumped out at me, and I'm just curious to know what your opinion is, Beth, as to why multi-families are not being built. And how can we support the efforts with builders to maybe get more of those built?
Part of it is accessibility to infrastructure in Eastern Connecticut. My counterpart in Litchfield runs into the same issues, that many communities are very small with lack of sufficient infrastructure to handle larger multifamily buildings. So what do? We build them smaller. We infill them. So that's one thing in Eastern Connecticut, is building smaller. There is pending legislation to update this. I know this is not a great conversation in the morning, but our septic capacity and how we measure and what kinds of septic systems are permitted here in Connecticut. There are high-tech systems that are permitted in Massachusetts and Rhode Island that allow for increased density because they are more sophisticated systems. So we have some regulatory barriers there. The cost of land here is very expensive, especially in those areas with infrastructure. Infrastructure is a huge value add for anybody looking to develop any type of housing, but in particular multifamily housing. We are limited in Connecticut to the number of bedrooms for capacity in septic systems. And with these larger septic systems, we can still have freedom from large infrastructure commitments like tens of millions of dollars of sewer treatment plants, and we can have an increase in multifamily housing. I also think we need to look at ways of infilling in Eastern Connecticut. There are lots of areas. I took Route 12 down from the Danielson area. I just went along Route 12. There are great swaths of undeveloped or abandoned commercial space. We need to look at infill of housing along those corridors that already exist. And look at those corridors differently.
Interesting. So then, Suzanne, I think what a wonderful segue for you then. So how does HUD's work in, because I know HUD supports over 91,000 housing units across Connecticut. Can you break down maybe some key programs that make this possible for them to support this number of?
Sure, and this is totally rental that we're talking about in the 91,000. That consists of low-income public housing, traditional housing owned by our housing authority partners across the state. Housing choice vouchers, which are issued by our housing authority partners. State of Connecticut is our largest voucher program and are used statewide. as well as our multifamily housing, which is privately owned, publicly subsidized, in many cases housing. About 63% of our multifamily housing stock is has a subsidized unit. We don't use the term affordable, which I know Kathy Austin wants to get rid of. A lot of times the state mentions affordable. They use our housing income limits, but that is not a HUD term. I probably get one call a week on that. But we do support housing across those three primary subsidized programs. Along with that, we support the development housing and housing through the monies we give to communities directly, as well as the state of Connecticut to spread across small cities. And that's through our CDBG, Community Development Block Grant, as well as our home programs. And all of those go to work very cooperatively with CHFA and DOH's programs. We've muscled through how to work together as agencies long ago, thankfully, and our programs do merge very well in Connecticut, because not one of us can afford to build all the housing units. It really takes a combination of our programs to make it successful.
As Brian was speaking, I thought of an example of how I had a buyer who was just, quite frankly, just not getting the bid won. I had a conversation about potentially maybe switching to a CHFA program with this potential for the $25,000 forgivable grant. And all of a sudden, they gave them $25,000 more in buying power, and the very next offer we wrote, they won the bid. Brian, can you give any examples? Do you have any real life scenarios where you can maybe talk about how different CHFA programs really have an impact and to cause more success with home ownership?
Yeah, sure. So by the way, it's tremendous to hear that, and glad to hear that stories like that where you had a borrower, home buyer, and they looked to a CHFA lender, and that helped bridge the gap. Last year, by the way, was a banner year for CHFA. Our biggest year since 2007. We actually funded over 3,873 loans last year, first mortgages, so actual home buyers last year, which is phenomenal. That's our biggest year since 2007, which I find amazing because I was a loan officer back then during those years, and to have a banner year with that much volume in a year with down inventory just shows that we're making that difference. 2,400 plus of those borrowers were using time to own, so that was amazing too, and it was over $1 billion in funding. One story, and I have my notes here, just quickly, from 2023. So we had a borrower who was a single mom, and she had a 14-year-old and a 4-year-old. She was looking for a home in the city of Hartford, and obviously, kind of like your home buyer, was having a hard time bridging the gap. Thankfully, they worked with a lender who was one of our great lenders who helped, like I said before, layer other sources of down payment assistance. They got a CHFA first mortgage, they got time to own, and then, reading my notes here, they got funds from the city of Hartford, and then our good friend Jackie in the back, funds from HDF. They had HDF Home Ownership Equity Fund, HDF Live Where You Work, HDF Project Reinvestment. These are all programs that she qualified for. HDF Closing Cost Assistance Deferred Loan Program, and lastly, funds from the Federal Home Loan Bank Equity Builder. So if you're keeping score at home, that's 7 different sources of subordinate financing that she qualified for with a CHFA first mortgage at a low rate. So she was able to buy a $229,000 home in Hartford with a first mortgage of only $63,000. Her principal and interest payment was about less than $400 a month. It was $390 and change. So she would have never qualified for this house otherwise. And that's just a great example of how our programs, when combined with other resources, can be absolutely game-changing and life-changing for borrowers who can qualify.
Before I move on, because I could just talk on forever and ever and ever and ever, is there a pressing question in the audience that would just shout one out? I see one hand in the back.
I'm wondering if the lack of updated community housing, like they took down everything on Crystal Avenue in London and not replacing those units and stuff, that must have a huge impact. Or the maintenance that goes along with those. I know that there's a lot of problems with deferred maintenance in those type of buildings.
Yeah.
So that's what's causing them to be.
If you could restate the question
Sure.
for the online community.
Stephanie asked if, the loss of units that weren't rebuilt, such as State Pier or Crystal Avenue in New London, the high-rises that were adjacent to kind of under the bridge. My first public office was in New London Housing Authority as a commissioner, and I remember walking through that site being told it's not that bad, by the executive director, and I thought, but you don't live here, right? So you say it's not that bad, and when we're making that kind of comparison that some people are worthy of good quality sanitary housing and some people are not, we've got a problem. The Housing Choice Voucher Program through HUD was used, and the state was used to relocate tenants throughout sites. Some people left the state. Many went through different communities outside of New London. So there was a loss of kind of community fabric there too that I don't want to miss speaking about. These were neighbors. These were people that raised families in the city of New London. They played on our football teams and were on our cheering squad. So these are our neighbors. We lost our neighbors when that housing came down and they scattered. We in New London, the Housing Authority is looking at increasing units along Gordon Court. Gordon Court is near the Coast Guard Academy. They're about 300 square foot efficiency, one level brick buildings, and they're kind of tucked near an electrical substation. They are looking to take those units down, rebuild, and increase the number of units. I will say, and maybe this HUD can speak to this, we're all concerned about the loss of federal funding to support our most vulnerable residents. The residents that live there, one of my friends, Tim, he makes $911 a month in Social Security disability. He has no family. You know, his community is it. And he pays for about $300 a month in rental to the New London Housing Authority. So, you know, there are constraints when things are broken. That's all the Housing Authority gets for that unit. There is no additional subsidy for that unit. So we need to pay attention to those units that are most vulnerable.
Speaking of subsidies, it may not necessarily be 100% related, but Suzanne, how does HUD's work in mortgage insurance, public housing, and vouchers directly impact Connecticut residents?
Well, these are your neighbors. These are the people who live in your neighborhood, your grandparents, your neighbors' grandparents, your parents, your children. My children who moved from Texas and are living with me. So how do they impact it? Every single state in Connecticut has at least one FHA, every single community has at least one FHA mortgage. That means the federal government supported that unit. People rent, people have vouchers, voucher rent in units, those units pay your taxes in every community. These are housing investments across the entire income spectrum, whatever you'd like to call it, from the very lowest, our elderly folks who served our country, paid their dues, you know, only have Social Security, which, as you know, cannot pay for a unit in Connecticut. And we want these people to remain. Our grandchildren need their grandparents in the area. HUD supports communities. In terms of future funding, I'm sorry, I'm not at liberty to discuss that. You know, I'm sorry. I'm a Connecticut person. I grew up in the housing world here in Connecticut, but right now we're transitioning, and you know, we don't even have the results of the CR and what we're going to see for funding. But people are calling our office. We're, you know, certainly working. We have been subject to a fair amount of layoffs, but we are doing our best locally.
I did see other hands. I'm going to try to get maybe one or two more. We are going to be at a pretty hard stop in about 5 minutes, so you know.
Hi, Brian. This is to follow up on what you had presented. Are all the loan officers familiar with all these programs? Like, you ran through so many, I already forgot some of them.
Right.
Like, if you had a list, who do we know? It seems our buyers, we all have buyers that can't qualify for things, and they sound like such good programs, but I think that's more on the loan officer side. If we could say, you know, go to these, they have a list of these programs that you could qualify for, I think that would be super helpful.
Sure. Our website is tremendous. We definitely have all of our programs listed there. We also have our list of approved lenders there. So the way it does work is that the borrower does work with one of our 90 different approved lenders and brokers to get pre-approved. To your point, some loan officers are stronger in the program than others. We do mandate that all new lenders take our required trainings. We have 5 different training modules that they take based on their different roles at the bank or lender, and we make them retake it within 12 months on top of that. Some lenders definitely embrace the program more than others. You can actually look on our website too and see which lenders do more volume than other lenders. Sometimes that's also helpful to some realtors to see which lenders are kind of specializing in it more. But then there's some loan officers out there that make it publicly known that they embrace and love this program and that they're the ones that are really championing, the CHFA and out there trying to help first-time home buyers. But you're right, not every loan officer wants to specialize in CHFA, but we do the best we can. We do mandate training when they're new, and we require them to retake training within 12 months. We offer the free training to loan officers every month. There's a training calendar, and they take it. But to any borrowers that want to learn more information about CHFA, our website has tons of great information on it. And if you want to stop by our table later, we can give you some more flyers too if you want to bring those back.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Can I have something, Quincy? Brian mentioned housing counseling, HUD funds housing counseling agencies across the country and across Connecticut. If you gave one bit of advice is to have your buyers visit early. Start with, rental budget assisting, budgeting, planning for your first home. As you know, you can't just jump into home ownership, not in Connecticut. Our threshold is too high. So I think that is an underutilized resource, which CHFA and HUD both support, and I think it's just a great bit of advice you can give anyone you're speaking to is take advantage of those free classes. To start the budgeting process early, it's a mindset, as many of you know. It's not just paying the mortgage, it's so much more than that, so you're successful. What we don't want is people losing that first house. We want them to be successful in that house, understand the implications, where to turn for maintenance, and that's the role of our housing counseling agencies that we support.
Well, I want to thank all of you for taking your time out of your busy schedules to meet with us, to share with us, and to help us to become better at the things that we do, and we can have giving us information about resources we can turn to better support our clients and customers. Would you give them all a round of applause, please?